It's the same amount of effort to learn how to raise $500,000 as it is 5 million, 25, 50 million. I'm going to take the time to walk you guys through how to raise capital for real estate. I want to show you real practical ways to build interest with investors. And as I like to say, dig your well before you're thirsty. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Marcin Drozden. As the gentleman mentioned, I'm the managing partner of M1 Real Capital. I have sourced well into 9 figures in private capital. I've had term sheets for $25, $50 million. I've started out just like a lot of people, picking up checks for $5, $10, $15, $20, $50,000. See, capital raising is one of those things where most people don't think about it as a thing until you have your deal. It's not one of the things that cross your mind, right? Like you're taught about the deal, you're taught about financing, vendor mortgage, vendor takebacks, things like this, property management, and then you're thinking about it in the context of your own money to deploy your $100, $200 million, whatever it is. And then when you're done, what do? The first investor that invested with me way back when they said yes, I literally drove 2.5 hours to pick up a check for $5,000. So really? Okay, I'll be right there. Because it was just one of those things that was just so impressive to me to actually have that opportunity. And, that I'm getting too far ahead of myself here. But how I first got into real estate was I was 19 and I met somebody who did really, really well. And I volunteered to carry their for sale signs. The big for sale signs, the big wrought iron things. I jammed those things into my Volkswagen Golf, ripped up the entire roof. But it was my way into the business. That's how I got into real estate. And it was lucky for me. A few years after that, I got recruited into private equity. And then immediately from single family duplexes, we're like, okay, we're buying 100, 200 unit residential community in Arizona, in Texas, wherever it is. It's just like, wow, like that's insane. Like $20 million, $50 million deals. I'm stressing about trying to buy a $200,000 condo. It was just like my brain couldn't compute. And I'm sitting in these meetings and they must have thought I was smart because I didn't say anything, but really I'm sitting there. I'm like, I better not say anything. I'm just going to write words because you don't know, right? You're learning. And I'm going to talk to you guys about a concept here, be, do, have, because you have to learn a few core concepts, especially on the fundraising side, because it brings everything together. And that's really where I'm going to get into things here. My goal is to teach you the easy system for raising capital. Easy is an acronym, and we'll get into that here. Here's a sample of some of the commitments I've secured over the years, 25, 50, $100 million facilities. They're out there, guys. The money is out there. It really is. And what I want to share with you most importantly is whether you're trying to raise $500,000 or $5 million, $50 million, the process that you go through will be very, very similar. So if you're going to do it, think about it in a context where it's actually worth your while. Don't just settle for, oh, I'm only capable of this, or oh, I'm only capable of that. It's the same amount of effort to buy a 10-plex as a 100-unit building. So it's the same amount of effort to learn how to raise $500,000 as it is 5 million, 25, 50 million. We all have ceilings. Right? We all have it. I was on the phone with a hedge fund manager out of New York, walking him through my business, my fund, my plan, whatever it is. He goes, okay, great. So where are you at? I walk him through it. And I thought what we were doing is pretty big, pretty exciting. He goes, actually, you're a little small for us. I go, really? How big is your client? He goes, well, our smallest client is $1 billion. Well, all right. I guess I'll be back. Context, right? It's all context. So, a concept that I want to get into with you guys here to help crystallize this conversation is, what is the lifetime value of an actual investor that participates with you? So there's 4 main components that you guys need to consider. The first one is the actual profits you're able to generate from that opportunity, right? Because the investor's money, you can actually do a deal. Makes sense. The second one, highly overlooked, is the fees you don't have to pay when you raise money. I've paid millions of dollars in fees. It doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just a cost of capital. It's real. It can be, we'll talk about it, 5, 10, 15% of the actual amount of money you need. That adds up. The third one is the amount of times that that person reinvests with you. That is also a component of the value of that customer because, well, if they reinvest with you 3 times over their lifespan with you, that's a big deal. Of course, the fourth one is if they introduce people. If you do well, you do right by them, they'll bring you investors. Let's actually put that into context of financials. So success fees, and again, they could be called different things. They could be called commissions. They could be called performance fees, all kinds of things. 5-10% is normal. So on $100,000, that is $5,000 to $10,000. You've got legal expenses, marketing expenses. Those fees increase as you increase the complexity of what you're doing. So if you have other people raising money for you, they don't have your vision. They don't see it the way you do. They're going to want brochures. They're going to want handouts. They're going to want all kinds of things. Those things cost money. The next thing is the profit participation. Most brokerages, and actually Joel talked about this, the money is in the money, 100%. If a brokerage is going to deploy $100 million and you're going to get $1 million, $5 million, $10 million of that, they're going to want to wet their beak, as Kevin O'Leary likes to say, in the deal. And they'll take 5 to 20+% of the ownership of the project just because they brought you the cash. All of this combined, simple example, on $100,000, if somebody reinvests with you 3 times, that's literally $300,000 in investment that will cost you $100,000 plus. That's the value of learning how to secure your investors. On $1 million reinvested, you end up paying close to $1 million plus in fees. And guys, I'm not even talking about all the other intangible benefits. If you have your own investors, the referrals are yours. If you're working with a brokerage, the referrals are theirs. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just trying to help you guys understand the difference there. So the saying, he who has the gold makes the rules. And EASY stands for exclusive, abundant, scarce in your allocation. And don't worry, there'll be slides. You'll have access to all of it. And I created the EASY system purely out of necessity. I'll take you back to 2010, 2011, I think it was. I was closing 3 properties concurrently at the same time, October 31st. And the investor called me on October 28th and said, hey, sorry, man, can't make it work. Can't do it. 1 investor, 3 deals. You guys have all seen Jerry Maguire, right? When he got fired in the restaurant, I had my Jerry Maguire moment instantly. The whole world just froze. And the worst part was my lawyer, my real estate lawyer, was in the same office building as me. And his office was down the hall from mine. So I find out I don't have the equity I needed for the deal. And my lawyer is down the hall. So I'm going to the bathroom, kind of like just trying to, past his door so he doesn't see me because I need to figure out what to do with this. So long story short, I figured it out. But when I went through that, when the dust settled, I was never going to be in that situation again. So here it is. This is 5 steps, and I'm going to go into this as much detail as I can. So step 1 is about addressing the few inches that you've got right here in your head. And it's mindset based, and I think a few people have already touched on it. And I'll only labor it to this extent that it doesn't matter what I teach you or anyone else here teaches you if this right here isn't congruent with what you're trying to accomplish. Because things will happen where you'll come across a deal and you'll immediately think, oh, I don't have the money. It's too big for me. The piece in your head, that context, that's going to be part 1. So I'll give you guys tactics around that. Step 2 will be crafting your story and your pitch. Now, show of hands, who here has met somebody, ask them what they did just purely out of politeness, and then 7 minutes later, you're staring at them and you're like, I still don't understand what the hell they do. Any of you? That's a function of not having your story straight. At the end of the day, if you can't articulate what you're doing, look, you have to be able to quickly explain it. It's not complicated. No matter how complicated you think your business is, I assure you it's not. And by the way, with an investor in front of you, you definitely don't want it to be complicated. So we'll go into that. Step 4 is going to be qualifying investors. Have you ever sat down with somebody, spent months and months and months working with them, prospecting emails, hundreds of correspondences, and then you find out that they're actually not qualified to invest? Has anyone in here ever been spoused? Let me check with my spouse. We literally used to record how many times guys would get espoused in the office just for fun, because it told us that they didn't actually properly assess the individual. They didn't qualify the conversation. Guys, there are hundreds of great open-ended questions, which is actually step 4, that you need to learn how to ask great questions. Here's my favorite, and here's a free one. Are you a real estate investor? Are you looking to invest in real estate? Or are you a professional real estate investor? Are you looking to invest in real estate, or are you a professional real estate investor? Do you understand the difference? When you ask somebody that, they'll ask you, well, what do you mean? You can say, well, do you want to just be participating in a real estate deal to put your money to work? Or do you actually want to be involved in the transaction? Are you a professional real estate investor? It's a great way for you to figure out who the heck you're talking to, right? Because some of you here are looking for a place to invest. Others are looking for people that are looking for a place to invest. Asking great questions will simplify your life. There's tons of these. And the last piece is going to be getting the commitment. So how do you find out if someone's qualified, interested, create urgency and demand without being a pushy sales guy or girl? So that's what I'm going to cover with you guys here today. Again, guys, my favorite saying, for those of you who know me, I always talk about competence creates confidence. Whatever you do 9 to 5, whether you're an engineer, doctor, dentist, teacher, principal, whatever you do, you are clear on what you're doing because you're competent. So you can be confident. Fundraising is a skill. So to become competent and develop the confidence, you need to invest the time into the skill set. A concept that I'm going to start with here today. Who's seen this, by the way? Be, do, have. Few of you? Okay. So it's a really, really cool concept. The best way to explain this concept to you guys is in the context of the 3 people that it applies to. You have the victim, the worker, and the winner. Now, the victim doesn't do be, do, have. They think have, do, and be. So they say things like, well, that's easy for you. If I had the money, or if I had all the deals, or if I had the contacts, I could do the deal and make things work, and then I could be happy. See, the victim puts have first, which in my opinion is a lazy way to do it because you're essentially copping out of the whole conversation. You can say, well, that's easy for so-and-so. That's easy for her. That's easy for them. Well, it's the victim mentality. Now, there's very, very, very few victims in this room because it's Saturday and we're sitting in an ice rink and you guys are learning about real estate. So obviously you guys are operating at a different level. A lot of you are probably workers. And a worker operates in the context of do, have, and be. And they look at the world in the context of, I need to do this work. I need to do this so that I can have this. And then one day I can be happy. Or one day I'll be satisfied. One day I'll be able to step up my game. One day I'll be able to do multifamily. Whatever that be is, it's down the path. It's in the future. They're not even... Until they're done doing and having, it doesn't even exist. So the right way to look at it is be, do, have. And guys, it's the hardest. And when I first learned this concept, I thought it was fluffy and BS and blah, blah, blah. But let me put it to you this way. Anybody that you know that's successful, millionaire, billionaire, successful to whatever extent you define success, what are they like? What is their state of being? What are the things they think about? What are the things that they don't even pay attention to? What are the things they don't even acknowledge? Do they care what other people think about them? Are they worried about other people's opinions? Are they concerned about, what their friends are going to think? Or are they focused on different materials? They have better problems. They focus on different things. It's really important. And once you have your B figured out, it's simple to know what to do because you can start to ask yourself questions. Okay, that deal's too big for me, but who do I need to become to be able to get a $75 million line of credit from the bank? Guys, my point is, whether it's from 700,000 to 7 million, 7 to 77, 700, it's all a context of who you have to become to get to that level. Put it another way, new level, new devil. That's another way to put it. Because you're dealing and grappling with issues that you've never had before. For those of you who are entrepreneurs, you're building a business. When you hired that first employee, 20th, now we need an office. And so you have to become something bigger. And I say that with you guys because the first thing that I need to go through with you guys before, because I can give you do this, then do this, then do this. But if you're sitting here like, I don't, people don't give me, you have to have the mentality that you can actually make this work. And it takes time, but you put in the time to get the outcome. So limiting beliefs, examples. I don't know people with money. I don't know what I'm doing. This deal is way too big for me. As we're going through this, you might have thoughts in your head that are limiting your beliefs, that are your limiting beliefs. Write them down for yourself. You have to share them with me or anyone else. I promise I'm not going to ask you or any of this stuff, but write it down for yourself, because you may not even know what your limiting beliefs are at this point. They're just on loop in your head. So write them down. Take a minute. What if instead you listen to yourself and your thoughts were, who do I need to become to add value in this deal? Who are the partners that I'm missing? What do I not know about this transaction that would help me get it done? I like the deal, but I see some risk. How do I mitigate it for my investors? Those are the thoughts. Catch yourself every time you have the negative ones, because it's everything. I forget who said it, but whether you're buying 10 doors, 1,000 doors, whatever it is, ultimately, it's whatever goes on in here. And we've all seen people that if you bought 10 doors and they're at 1,000, you're like, well, they're not that much smarter than me. How come, because they got this under control. It takes time. Takes discipline, takes effort. It's not easy. Another empowering belief to think to yourself is, rather than why would people invest with me? People invest with me because I work hard, I'm trustworthy, and I have access to great deals. Think about it in the context of what you provide. Everything starts in your brain. Brain can't tell the difference. Your brain is interesting. There's something called your reticular activating system. And if you've never heard of it before, Joel had mentioned it. It's the reason why when you point out the color yellow or yellow car, whatever it is, you see yellow. And that is true for everything. So whether it's a cell phone, a car, whatever it is, as soon as you see something, that's what your brain is programmed to now go see. And the thing about your RAS and your brain is, aside from your sense of smell, your RAS controls everything. It controls where you go in life. This isn't frou-frou. This is all real stuff. It's rooted in science. So again, when you think about things like when you say, oh, I can't do that, or I don't have the money, your brain goes, oh, okay, well, we don't have the money. We're going to keep looking at duplexes. There's nothing wrong with duplexes. They're great. But if you're trying to move up, you need to be very cognizant of where you're trying to go with your thoughts, because if you don't guard those few inches in your head, it's just not going to work. So I'll give you guys an example with self-worth determining net worth. In 2011, I left the private equity firm that I worked at, and I put together a search fund with a few partners. At the time, if you guys remember, our dollar was par to US dollar was actually higher. And the US dollar and the US market, you could buy properties for pennies on the dollar. My limiting belief at that point in my life was the amount of capital we could raise. So instead of raising, we did well. We raised an 8-figure fund. We should have been able to raise a 9-figure fund. My problem was that I didn't pay attention to what I was actually capable of. Let me give you guys some steps of my five-step process. Step 1, all of you have a network. You guys have contacts. And the question I get more than ever is, how do I start talking to my network? Well, here's a really good idea. You find the people that are closest to you that you think are capable and qualified to work with you and invest with you, and send them a little note. And it could go something like this. Hey, so-and-so, I wanted to reach out to you about a real estate opportunity that I've been working on, and it's looking like it can be really great, but it's a lot larger than what I can handle on my own. So look, obviously you're going to need more information, but is this something you would consider if it made sense? Simple, right? It's a simple, easy way to reach out to your network and say, here's what I'm working on. Here's what I'm doing. If it makes sense, obviously you need more information, but do you want to have the conversation? Now, that's if you have a deal and you're sitting there, well, Marston, I don't have a deal. I got you. If you don't actually have an opportunity right now, an alternative script to that could be, hey, so-and-so, I wanted to reach out to you about something about some of the real estate that opportunities I've been working on. I've been coming across more and more of these opportunities, and look, it's starting to be more than I can handle. Obviously, you'll need more information, but if this is something you would consider if it made sense. So that's your hook. And statistically, we've been doing this for a while. And I can tell you that typically you get between 20 and 30% of people responding and saying, hey, tell me more. Now, all right, well, what do you do next? Well, I mentioned earlier when people introduce themselves, they go off on a rant. The reason for it is because they don't actually have the right format in place in terms of what they're sharing. So these are the 6 components: your story, your why, your investment strategy, your asset class, your market, and your unfair advantage. So story, it has nothing to do with real estate or very little to do with real estate. It's about you. What makes you you? What makes you credible, trustworthy, hardworking? Why would somebody be able to relate to you? Why would they see you as somebody they could see themselves working with? What are the things that you've done in your life? Have you been a doctor? Have you been a dentist? Were you captain of your football team? What are the things in your life that you do that under any set of circumstances, somebody would look at this person and say, yeah, this is a good person. What is your story? What is it? What are the things that make you relatable? So quick story about me. We escaped communism. We came to North America for a better life, right? I grew up with no plan B. I watched my parents work 24/7. We were right downtown in Roncesvalles before Roncesvalles was a beautiful place to be. I watched my dad learn English as he worked, in an auto shop sweeping the floors and learning the language by what the parts were called. Right? So what is your story? What makes you relatable? Think about it. Write it out if you have to. I assure you, you are unique. You may not think so, but you are. There's no one else in this room that has your story. That's 1. 2 is your why. Guys, there's nothing wrong with a financial outcome. So many people are like, well, I'm trying to do this because of this. Look, if your why is to get out of your 9 to 5 and create wealth for your family, just say it. There's nothing wrong with that. Your investor will respect it, appreciate it, maybe even relate to it. It's totally acceptable. Maybe your why is a little bit more altruistic. Maybe you want to invest in a certain neighborhood because that's where you grew up and you really want to see that area cleaned up. There's different whys. Identify yours. Third one is investment strategy. And this is where people get tripped up because you'll meet somebody, you'll ask them what they do, and they'll say, well, we have these Airbnbs, we just bought some farmland, and we're actually looking at multifamily, and then we have this babysitting business on the side. Okay, cool. If I invest with you, are you going to be babysitting or are you going to be buying buildings? Like, what are we doing here, right? And I obviously a kid, but think about it. A lot of people think that you're impressing somebody when you tell them about all the different verticals and all the different markets and all the things you can do. You're confusing the shit out of people, is what you're really doing, especially investors that are passive, that are just looking for an opportunity. They don't understand. And look, even if you have 3 or 4 strategies, what is your main one? Keep it simple. You just met this person. Asset class, I kind of touched on it, same thing. Just because you have all these different things that you can do, what is the main thing that you do? Really important. Again, going back to Joel's 10-second thing, really important that you're clear. Market, how do you define it? Really important. Is it locational? Is it opportunistic? What are you focused on? And finally, your unfair advantage. So what is that one thing that you have because of your life story that other people don't have? For example, I started working in private equity in my early 20s, and I got exposed to things that huge deals. I couldn't go back to what I was doing before I worked there because I already saw where most people aspired to eventually get to. I was in the middle of it at 21, 22. It was unreal. So one of my unfair advantages is the fact that I understand capital formation, structures, all the different components, capital raising, because that's what I grew up in. That's what I understood. For you, it might be you grew up in a family of realtors, and maybe dad's been a realtor for 25 years, and on weekends used to go to open houses with him in between going to Niagara Falls for your aunt's birthday or whatever it is. You have your own experiences. You have things that are relatable that you have. So you have to think about those things in the context of how you tie them back to real estate and how those things help you. So step 2, they respond to you. Yeah, I'm interested. What are you thinking? It could be as simple, hey, so-and-so, thanks for getting back to me. I started investing in asset class, let's use me, multifamily 16 years ago in the US because I saw a real opportunity to buy, renovate, and refinance properties. My team and I are a great fit for this because I've been doing this for 16 years. Your unfair advantage. Personally, I love this asset class because it allows me to create financial freedom for my family, my investors, and my partners. And I wanted to share it with people that I can see myself working with. Now, if you have a deal, what are the 3 bullet points? Don't immediately send them the entire package and overwhelm them. You just started talking. I like this building because we're paying $30,000 a door. We've got it tied up for the next few months, and it's on the corner of Main and Main. and then just ask for a meeting. Step 3, you actually get your meeting. And when you sit down, you have to be able to have a conversation. Most investor meetings only take the actual investor part 10 to 20 minutes. The rest is everything else around it. Now, guys, don't misunderstand. You got to send paperwork, you got to educate them, you got to teach them, answer the questions. But the actual component where they're deciding if they want to work with you is a very, very short period of time. Very short period of time. So you have to build a framework around your conversation. One of my favorite ways to do it, and we practice this in our circle, is something called an upfront contract, which I learned years ago. And mine goes something like this. So we're meeting, we've had the small talk, our kids, football, soccer, whatever it is. And I would say something like, okay, everyone. So, as you probably know, I've been doing this for quite a while. And over the years, I've learned that most of my investors typically have a few questions. Like, what are the risks? What are the returns? And what are the timeframes? At the same time, I'm going to have some questions for you, like, what have you invested in before? How's it worked for you? And what are your goals going forward? Now, at the end of our meeting, one of two things is probably going to happen. We're either, going to go through the materials and we'll look at each other and go, yeah, you know what, this makes sense. And then at that point, it'll be my job to walk you through the process and make sure you're comfortable and, just kind of go from there. Alternatively, we might, look at each other during the meeting and go, you know what, this just doesn't make sense for one reason or another. And that's okay, because it's not a fit for everyone. So I guess what I'm asking is, if what I do isn't a fit for you, are you okay letting me know that? So at this point, most people would say yes, right? So what have I just done? I've given him permission to say no. Guys, if you want to feel like you're not pressuring people, or trying to pound things down people's throats to make them invest with you or buy with you, that's not how you do this stuff. This isn't a car. This isn't an air conditioner for the lowest price. This is a relationship that you're building. I'm telling you, it's okay to say no, because it is. Because what I do isn't a fit for everyone. So you guys need to think about how to create a solid framework for your conversation, because what that'll do is it'll create trust, rapport, and most importantly, it'll give you a framework to go back with in your meeting. When we were doing what we were doing when I still worked at the firm originally, we would have people come in that were, by all accounts, oh yeah, they're going to raise all this money. They're great. They're fantastic. They had no systems, no processes. They were like, and because they had no process, they had no systems, you couldn't diagnose what they were doing wrong. You guys have checklists when you find properties, right? You need a process so you can diagnose where you're losing people potentially. The next piece is asking great questions. During the course of your meeting, you're going to be asking questions of your potential investor. One of my favorite questions to ask is, how do you assess risk? What have you invested in before? How did it work for you? Do you know anybody that's made money in real estate? These are things that open up the conversation and let you actually understand their thought process and their potential biases around how they look at what you're potentially doing. I can tell you right now, we all have different experiences. We've heard different stories from different people about things and projects and whatever it is. But at the end of the day, you are not a mind reader, and until you ask them good questions to understand where they're coming from, it's not gonna move things forward, right? And by the way, this upfront contract is best in your first meeting. So literally, I have meetings with investors where I'll meet with them for the first time. I don't bring my materials. I don't bring my deck. I don't bring any of that stuff. I bring a notepad, and I just sit down for a coffee, and I want to know, what are their goals, what are their priorities. Again, I'm not a financial advisor, but I'm just trying to figure out conceptually if the things that they're trying to accomplish in life are somewhat tied to the things I'm trying to do, right? If somebody needs their money back in 6 months and you're trying to do a 5-year fix and flip, that'd be a long fix and flip. If you're trying to do a 5-year deal, you're not compatico. It doesn't mean it's bad. It's better to know that thing up front. Finally, step 5 is the easy system. So this is my absolute favorite. The easy system, as I mentioned, stands for exclusive, abundant, scarce in your allocation. So I'm going to give you guys the easy system in the context of what I'm currently doing, because it's real to me. And the E, the exclusivity, is of the opportunity. I was just on a podcast and, the people were talking about all going in cap rate, coming out cap rate, all this compression stuff and whatnot. I'm just like, guys, 95% of people don't understand what the heck you're talking about. Who is this podcast for? They're like, what do you mean? I go, when you have a deal, You need to talk to me in terms of what makes it exclusive that the everyday person understand. Tell me that the appraisal's 1.5 million and you've got to tie it up for 1.2. Tell me that there's $300 a month in the rent because the guy next door is renting at X. Tell me it's on the corner of Main and Main. Tell me it's across the street from the hospital. Tell me things that I can quickly understand, even if I don't do real estate. It's like, okay, that makes sense. That sounds like it's a good path. So exclusivity. So for example, for us, we have our US value add real estate opportunity LP. And what we do for exclusivity is some of our bullet points are we focus on buying multifamily buildings for as little as $30,000 a door. We buy them in large MSAs that are considered large by Canadian standards, but small by US standards. So for example, Mississauga here is 1 million people, right? And that's or probably more now. It's considered a major market. So is Calgary. 1 million people is a primary MSA, mostly in Canada. In the US, there's markets like Memphis where it's 1 million people and it's considered a secondary, sometimes tertiary market. Exclusivity. What makes your deal exclusive? What is it about your process that makes it exclusive? The second piece is abundance. So when you're talking to your investor, by the way, guys, the easy system is something you can use with an investor whenever you're talking to them. You could have met with them today, met with them again in a year. You can use that process with them at any point. You can literally re-engage a conversation and start from scratch. So again, exclusive. What are the 3 or 4 things that make your deal make a ton of sense? The second piece is abundance. And what I mean by that is the worst thing you could do, and I learned this the hard way, is to rely on one investor or a handful of investors to make or break your deal. And the problem with only having a very small amount of investors is here's what they're willing to offer. It may not be the best term, may not be the best options. You may get squeezed here, you may squeeze there. Even worse, what if they pull out? So there's a polite way to let them know. And it could be as simple as me saying, you know, John, I wanted to give you a call about this. The opportunity makes a ton of sense because of these 3 or 4 things. But look, I got to let you know that on top of talking to you, I have a handful of other people that I have to get back to because they want to hear about these types of opportunities. And there's no arrogance in that, guys. You just have to be very clear with your investor that they understand that you're not just calling them to bless the transaction. Because what happens is you have that one guy that you're like, okay, hopefully they're going to invest because I'm kind of screwed if they don't. You don't want to create that environment with your investor. You have to let them know that you have a lot of people to talk to. Now, if you're sitting here, you're thinking to yourself, well, I don't have that. Easy for you to say all the different components. You have to create abundance. How do you create abundance? You create value. You have to find ways to start adding value to your network. So exclusivity, abundance, scarcity. The scarcity, there's 2 ways to create scarcity in real estate. One is the time. The building is closing on January 15th as a firm day. That creates scarcity. By the way, rookie mistake, you should have your financial closing well before you have your building closing. For those of you who don't know what I mean, you'll figure that out very quickly. Because when an investor hears we're going to close on January 15th, they think it's okay to send you a check January 15th. And that creates a lot of heartache for a lot of people. Now, if you need 50 grand, it's one thing. If you need $5 million, you're up all night. So scarcity in terms of time, scarcity in terms of amount of capital. The great thing about real estate, when you're buying a building, you only need $500,000, $5 million, $3 million, whatever it is that you need. Once you have it, you're done. So in the context of a conversation, you can say to somebody, again, here's why it's a great deal. I've got some people I need to still talk to, so let me know. My challenge is that today is, May 14th. We're actually doing our financial closing on June 15th, and we're only looking for $1 million. So the thing is, my average investor typically does whatever amount of money, $50,000 or $100,000, and I only have $1 million left, which means I'm only looking for another 7 or 8 people, or however you want to phrase it. Whatever you do, don't lie. Tell the truth. If you have $1 million committed on 10 million, say you have $1 million. If you have nothing committed, you have nothing committed. But be candid, because that will help the investor understand where and if they fit. And then finally, there'll probably be some conversation about where you're at, where you're going. And at some point in the conversation, you could probably ask, look, obviously you need more information, but if this was a fit for you, what amount would you potentially consider? If someone's not interested, they'll tell you, look, I'm not interested. Oh, okay. Or actually, I don't get my money till next quarter. I'm selling the cottage, we've got this going on, whatever it is. Someone who's interested will tell you, well, yeah, no, I'd probably look at X. To which you could say, okay, obviously verify that they're accredited or whatever your rules are, because you've got to follow the rules. We'd say, okay, well, why don't we do this then? Today's Tuesday. I'm thinking we'll have this closed out by next Friday. What if I set that amount aside for you and we talk again on Friday so you have time to go through the paperwork, and then we can make sure that you're still comfortable? It's a soft commit. They have the time to go through the due diligence. If they're serious, and it makes sense. It allows you guys to actually work your way through it. So these are just facts. Here's why I'm excited. 30,000 plus a door. I'm able to buy, 200 unit buildings for under $5 million. We're buying them in major markets. Boom, 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 boom. Next thing. We've got a list of people waiting to hear from us, but I thought of you because I know you told me you wanted an opportunity like this. Scarcity, timelines, and then obviously you figure out if there is a fit, here's how you do it. Obviously send them the package, give them the information, but at least you have a conversation that you can have that makes sense. And guys, this stuff works. We have hundreds of members across the country that are part of our training. We buy apartment buildings mainly, but we also run a training with our inner circle, and the testimonials are there. It's clear. This works. There's no need to reinvent the wheel at this point. Just to finish off, guys, I want to leave you guys with this. You can sit here, and if you're trying to grow your real estate portfolio, you can see everything that I gave you, and you can think to yourself, yeah, it's all good. It's good. But I'm busy with this. And one day I'm going to, open this thing up and I'm going to start. My point is today your day one, or are you still thinking one day? You become the product that someone is potentially investing in. I had a guy in the hallway ask me, what's more important, the deal or the team? I said, the team, 100%. You can have the best deal in the world, but if you don't have the team behind it, it doesn't really matter. Same thing with fundraising, guys. There's a reason why Joel and other people say the money's in the money. Fundraising is a skill set. If any of you are interested in learning more about how to raise capital or M1 Real Capital or the boot camp or any of the trainings that we have, all the information is here for you guys.